Hi, I'm Marcy Baker, here to share with you how to patch a pair of jeans. Here my son brought me these jeans, and I'm going to show you how you can patch this to where it's almost impossible to tell that they were patched. The first step is to get a piece of patch fabric, and I'm going to use the leg of an old pair of jeans that wasn't worth patching, and that's what I have left here. And then we're going to cut a patch out of this that will fit the hole that we're working with. So here's the tear that I'm trying to patch up, and I'm going to lay a piece on top of it and cut a shape that's about, well, it's going to cover it plus about 1 inch or even 2 on all sides of it, depending on how thin you think the fabric is. This one's pretty thin jean fabric, and so I need to cut a bigger piece. So here's a piece that's going to go underneath inside, but it will cover the entire tear. Now I'm going to take and with the side that I want up, put that up inside the pair of jeans, the pant leg, and I lay it flat on my hand underneath and try and get the jean on top of it, kind of covering it up. And then I also want to center it, so I have jean fabric around here, and it's a little low there, so I'm going to move it up a little bit. And I have it there and all the way over here. So that's about where I want it. I'm going to keep my hand under there, and I'm going to pin all around the edge and trying to make that tear as flat as possible. As you're pinning this, you want to be careful not to poke yourself. I'm actually spreading my fingers underneath and pinning in between my fingers. So now that I have it pinned, I'm going to go set up my sewing machine so that I'll be able to stitch this. And that's good enough. I don't even need to put pins there, I don't think. Here's a close-up of the pinning that I've done, and here you'll notice that there's some threads that you might want to trim off if you're not comfortable with them there, but I'm going to leave them and I'm going to stitch them down, and they'll be part of the patchwork. The thread that I'm going to use is a light gray or a light blue that matches the jean fabric that we're working with. We need to set the sewing machine up for darning, and what that requires is a darning foot, as I've put on here, and then also dropping the feed dogs. And on this machine there's a button that I push over, and now the feed dogs are dropped and they won't be moving the fabric as I try and sew. You'll need to check your sewing machine's manual, or maybe check online, see if you can get information on what you need to do to your machine to make it for darning. Here's a close-up of the darning foot. It has an arm that will connect somehow to the needle bar, and then also some kind of ring that will allow us to hold the fabric down. What happens here is as the needle goes up, the darning foot lifts with the needle bar, and then we can move our fabric, and then as the needle goes down, the ring holds the fabric in place so we don't break our needle. One more thing I need to do to the machine is to make it so it has what's called a free arm. And so this is going to come off, and now I can slide my jean up over this. So I don't have a nest of thread on the bottom. What I need to make sure is that I pull the thread from the bottom thread up. And so I'm going to take one stitch and then pull the thread up, and I'm going to grab the bobbin thread, pull those out. So now I should have 2 threads coming out, and they're under the foot. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the fabric of the jean and make the stitches whatever length I want. The length that you have your machine set to won't matter. And we're going to start stitching, and I like to set my machine, if you have that possibility, so that the needle stops down in the fabric whenever I start sewing. So here I'm going to take a few stitches just to get it started, and I'm holding this thread, and now we're ready to stitch. And I'm going to stitch in the direction of the weave of the fabric, which this one has a weave that is perpendicular, whereas most jeans that I have patched has a diagonal weave. So we'll be doing perpendicular back and forth trying to go with the grain of the fabric. And as I stitch over, I want to make sure I don't catch my pins or break my needle on my pins. And I need to move my fabric. And one thing that I teach in my quilting classes is if you can set your machine to have a slow setting, a slower on the motor, and then just floor it with your foot. And then you can just work on moving your hands, and so you can get some nice stitch lengths that way. I'm going to trim these threads off that are hanging here, so they're out of my way. And I want to make sure that I'm sewing as far out as my fabric. My fabric goes to here, so I need to make sure my stitches go that far out. And I don't have to catch all of the fabric really close. I just kind of do like a baste and get it all the way across. And as I go across where the tears are, I need to make sure that my foot does not catch on these longer threads. So you want to take it a little slower there. Now I have it all basted and kind of held in place. I'm going to go back and forth this way and stitch this down pretty fast with my machine pedal to the metal and fill it in back and forth. So let's go. Here this white line is still showing, and so to cover that up I'm going to stitch along the line with my gray thread. So this is looking pretty good. The gray is all filling in. If I wanted to, I could use a light blue thread and do some more stitching to kind of mix it in, but I think this is satisfactory. Let's do a little bit of trimming now. So I'm going to now turn the leg inside out, and you can see the back side of the patch. What I'm going to do to make this so it doesn't ravel and get really bulky is I'm going to trim the edges, but I want to make sure that I don't cut my original pant leg. So I'm going to be very careful to just trim the edges of the patch that I didn't catch. Here's a close-up of the patch and the trimming, and you can see here is the jean and this is the patch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to orient my scissors so that I can see the jean fabric, and I'm just trimming away the extra patch fabric. I'm going to be very careful not to cut into the jean. Here's a close-up of the stitching that I've done on the jean. And let's zoom back, and you can see what the patch looks like on the jean leg. And as these get washed and worn, that patch disappears. It just blends in. So we got that pant leg patched. And here's the other one on that pair of jeans. I'd already patched the knee once, but I didn't make the patch quite big enough, and it got weak right above it. So I'm going to have to add some more to it. But it'll be okay. I can patch it. I'm Marcy Baker. I've enjoyed sharing this technique with you. Thanks for watching.